the Wood Memorial from Aqueduct on Saturday. Mile and an eighth, 3-year-olds, main track. You can see the field of 11 signed on here. Post-time favorite was Tacitus for Bill Mott. He was the winner of the Tampa Bay Derby in his most recent start. That was his first start as a 3-year-old. Had a pretty cushy trip in the grand scheme, but he was very impressive nonetheless. The question now was, would he be able to replicate it? Would any of the other horses step up and sort of take the initiative and push a horse like Tacitus and see if he could get it done? Well, we had a little bit of pinball action going on early, but ultimately, relatively formful result, and Tacitus did prevail. Here's the stretch run of the Wood.
Here comes Tex and Tacitus, and the two of them are right together as they come to the 8th pole. Long shot Math Wizard has run a big one. He's third on the outside. Tacitus on the outside. Tex along the rail. Tacitus and Tex locked in battle at the 16th pole. It's Tacitus in front. Tex second on the inside as they come down to the line. Highcall takes third late. It is Tacitus in the Wood Memorial.
Tacitus gets the job done as the 5-2 favorite over Tax, who finishes second at odds of 5-1, and Highcall rallying from off the pace at odds of 3-1, finishes third, rounding out your trifecta. Let's take a look at Tacitus a little bit more. He is 3 of 4 lifetime. He is just over $650,000 in career earnings, owned and bred by Judd Mundt Farms Incorporated in Kentucky, trained by Bill Mott, ridden to victory by Jose Ortiz. You can see the pedigree at the bottom of the horse card. He's by Tappet out of a first defense mare named Close Hatches. So the pedigree is there in spades, and he is basically living up to expectation. Mom was a champion. We'll find out. You know, Tappet, obviously, he's searching for that first Kentucky Derby winner. Perhaps Tacitus is going to be the first one. You take a look at the figures of this race. 97 Beyer speed figure, 120 time adjusted or pace adjusted time form US rating. Without the pace, it's a 119. Tax earned a 95 Beyer and a 121 time form US rating. That is pace adjusted, 117 raw. All of the fractions, no surprise in this race, were color-coded red according to time form US. Those fractions were 23 and 3, 46 and 4, 11 and 2 for 3/4. They stopped a mile and 37 and 4, and final time of 151 and 1 for a mile and an eighth. Let's start off at the beginning. This race was a little bit of bumper cars early on. You had Jovea from the outside basically just take a left-hand turn out of the gate. A little bit of an irresponsible ride there. I believe Nick Juarez has been reprimanded. You can find that over on DRF.com. It led to a number of horses being pinballed and pinched back, most notably a horse like Final Jeopardy, who got the worst of it early on, but then a horse that got it early, and then again going into the first turn was Over Deliver, one of the two Pletchers in here. Not very often you see Todd run last and second to last in a field of 11 in a final 3-year-old prep. Over Deliver was just the unfortunate sort of recipient of some of those things, so you want to give him the benefit of the doubt. This is a total line out for him. Outshine was affected going into the first turn by that extra sort of bouncing around. He was floated about 7 paths wide. He's another one. This was a disappointing effort, but you might want to give him the benefit because of the issue going into the first turn. Tacitus was involved in a little bit of that as well, being pinched, sort of floated between horses. Not the cleanest of goes early on, but then when the pace took over, things kind of sorted themselves out, where Tacitus and Tax were taking up what would appear to be, if you're going from tail to front to tail, basically a mid-pack position, although they were running 3rd and 4th at the time. They were just so far behind those top two who were setting those fast fractions. Tacitus, after that little hiccup at the beginning, pretty comfortable trip all around. The same can be said for Tax. Tax was the first one to go for home as opposed to Tacitus, but Tacitus did finish slightly faster, about a length if you want to use the 1/5 of a second sort of equation or comparison. Tacitus comes home in his final 8th of 13:42. Tax comes home in 13:62. Why are those numbers and fractions important? I've brought it up a number of times, and other folks on Twitter have brought it up as well. Final 1/8 of a mile can be a good sort of let's say a good jumping off point as to how will these horses fare with an extra 1/8 of a mile to finish in the Kentucky Derby. And when you look at it, I usually look at it and say, if you can get that final quarter sub 26 in the Derby, you're going to be in pretty good shape, especially if you have some tactical speed. If you're trying to come from 100 out of it with the final quarter in 25 and 4, 25 and 3, you're probably going to have too much to do. You'll pick up some pieces, but you're not necessarily as likely a win contender just because you have so much ground to make up. A horse like Tacitus has a little bit of versatility. He has some tactical speed. Doesn't have to come from way out of it, but he can rally when the pace is hot. I liked I have to be honest, I was a little bit skeptical. I thought he was the horse to beat, but at the price, I thought you had an opportunity to take a shot against him, and he acquitted himself quite nicely. From a numbers standpoint, he continues to stack up favorably against his 3-year-old competitors and his contemporaries, and I think you have to look at him and say he is on the short list of contenders for the Kentucky Derby. I will say it for this race. I'll say it for the next 2 as well. Keep in mind the trend all the years that this Derby point system has been implemented. If you have not won one of the final preps leading into the Kentucky Derby, you have not been a true contender to win the Derby, because all of the Derby winners with this point system being implemented, all of them won one of the final prep races across the country. So Tacitus, he checks that box if you're looking for that and you believe that trend will continue. Tax, I thought, ran a credible race, and to me, he's an honest racehorse. He's one that I wouldn't totally discount for a race like the Derby, but I will be using him underneath at the very least. I'm not going to make a pick just yet for the Kentucky Derby, but there's a lot to go. We still have Arkansas to run next week, and there's plenty of time for these horses, whether it's workouts, whether it's whatever the case may be. A lot of things can happen between now and the first Saturday in May. Tax with the 121 pace-adjusted time form rating, actually the fastest rating in the field. I think he's a nice horse, and again, I think he's honest. That's the thing that I like most about him. It feels like you're going to get a good effort from him no matter what. He's one that I think you do need to consider at what will probably be a very, very fair and playable price in Kentucky, but he has punched his ticket. He is in the starting gate if they choose to go there, which, I mean, at this point, if you have the points, you're probably going to go. High Cal ran better than I thought he would, but again, another beneficiary of a big pace situation to run at. He gets his final 8th in 13:06, which you would imagine is going to translate favorably. But I went through Formulator and I looked at the incremental splits for each of the top 3 runners, and a horse like High Cal is fitting that sort of profile of what I described of, sure, if you finish in 26 or sub, but if you're coming from so far out of it, you're probably not looking at anything more than picking up some, minor pieces after passing tired horses. Those top 2 horses, though, they have enough early speed that I think they could position themselves where they might be able to finish well. Now, they do need to work on that, because if you just, let's say you doubled up their final 8s, they're both well over 26 into the 27 range, which is not ideal, but just for comparison's sake, when you look at the final 8s for Tacitus, Tax, and High Cal, Tacitus comes home in 13:42, Tax comes home in 13:62, High Cal comes home in 13:06. Compare that to their opening quarter miles. Tacitus 24:64, Tax 24:39, High Cal 25:41. So considerably slower for High Cal, about 4 lengths slower than a horse like Tacitus, and let's say right around 5 lengths, bordering 6, slower than a horse like Tax early on. There is your difference with those final 8ths of a mile. A horse like High Cal, who went as slow as he did for that opening quarter, he should have a little bit more energy left for that final 8th, as opposed to those top 2 runners who were a lot closer and going a lot faster early on. It's all about energy distribution and when is it used. High Cal, he'd be the kind of horse I'm still dubious. I think with a slower pace situation, how much does that compromise him going on? We'll find out. Rest of this field, I think you want to look at a horse like Final Jeopardy and say he was pinched back and compromised early. This was his first time going 2 turns. I think you want to give him the benefit of the doubt. Hoffa's Union didn't necessarily pass the test. First time going against winners, first time graded stakes, first time stretching out to a mile and an 1/8, first time going out for Mark Casse. He needs to prove and validate that 95 that he earned in his career debut. I think both Pletchers, you want to give a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. Certainly you want to give a mulligan to over-deliver. Outshine, I was dubious going into this race. His early issue certainly compromised his chances, but a disappointing effort nonetheless. The top 2 horses, as far as pace is concerned, you want to look at Jovea, even with that little sort of a bad situation early on. But also not that Brady. Not that Brady was up there forwardly placed, and he didn't totally pack it in. I think he's going to be better going a little bit shorter. Thought all around that was a pretty decent effort from him as well. I have no knocks about the top 2 horses in this race. Even the top 3. I'll include High Cal. I think going forward, Tacitus, he has earned his right to be on the short list of contenders for the first Saturday in May. I like Tax. I think he's a very honest horse. In High Cal, he's been the beneficiary of 2 fast paces in each of his past 2 races. We'll find out if the situation presents itself the same way in Kentucky. Now, the problem for High Cal is he might be a little bit borderline in points. You can find the entire point system over on DRF.com. Take a look at that. Things will, again, continue to change as these next couple races go on, you're going to have the Arkansas Derby and the Lexington for minor points. But Tacitus, he deserves to be in the starting gate the first Saturday in May. He's done nothing wrong, and he's living up to the billing and the pedigree. A son of Tappa out of the champion mare Close Hatches. Tacitus is a dual graded stakes winner, and he is one of the contenders, the main contenders for the Kentucky Derby. He wins this year's Wood Memorial with a 97 Beyer and a 120 pace adjusted Timeform US rating.